Hey, love, before we jump in, I want to make you aware that Tools of Transformation is open as of now, and it holds all the exercises that I wish I would have known when starting on my spiritual journey, even before, because would I have known how much it helps my daily life to reset my nervous system, to release stress, release anger, to energetically make conversations go my way before I even have them, or what mirror work can do, my life would have been shifted. So I really invite you to check that out. Link is in the captions below. And now we jump straight into the episode to have another wonderful conversation about how to get to this point of empowerment, how other women did it, what tools they used, what perspective shifts they found for themselves, how they navigated their life to come back to their empowerment. Enjoy the episode. Hey, beautiful souls. I have the wonderful Erika with me today, and we will talk about empowering and relocation because Erika works as a relocation coach. And I think that is like, I want to dive into that. But before we do, Erika, welcome here. I'm so glad to have you. I'm beyond excited for that talk. And I would love to start the conversation with you sharing a bit about yourself so that people kind of get a feeling for you, and then we just see what happens.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Erica, and I am a ICF life coach. As you said, I'm an insight life coach. Relocation is my métier because I have done it more than once. I've made some mistakes, and I learned from some mistakes. I also have a degree in psychology and a pending master's degree in psychology. So I'll be graduating soon with that. And I'm just really passionate about helping people relocate because I have done it more than once. And the first time was a little messy. This time was really good. And being someone in their mid 30s, it is really hard to find friends and really hard to find your tribe, especially in a place where a lot of people have connections already, especially from like childhood. Very hard to break into that. So I wanted to help other women who might be struggling with the same thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think when we think about relocation, there's always so much excitement about everything, but then when we're there, often it's like this, oh, this isn't working. How to
Yes.
that? And not from a place of how do I organize my move, but from the emotional place, from like you said, how do I make friends? How do I connect? How do I whatever? When I maybe not even have a new workplace already, or when I'm self-employed, all these emotional questions that come up. I've never seen someone really address that directly. So
Yes.
how amazing.
Well, I mean, you touch on a great point. So, so I moved from North Carolina to North Dakota first. And I was so excited. It was somewhere different. I do research things, but you know how it is online. It's so much different when you're there. But I was so excited. It was something new. I had come from, the like Piedmont region, and then I was going to the Midwest, and um, then the excitement wore off. And I was like, I have no family here. I have no friends. I lived in a very small town that was like an hour from the Canadian border. So very low diversity. And so I was like, oh my gosh, after a few months of, oh, this is new, this is fun, traffic is low. There were only 50,000 people there. So after all of that wore off, I was like, I miss home. But I will say a positive thing. I actually talked to my family more than I did when we lived around the corner from each other. So there were some good things to it. But I was like, I have to do something or I'm gonna stay in the house. So I started going to different events. My spouse worked for the university there. And so I started going to different events and talking to people. And, I found my little tribe there and I still talk to them, which is nice. I live in Rhode Island now. So that move was a lot less messy and an easier transition, being an East Coaster. So but definitely the emotional piece of it, where you like miss home, you miss things that you didn't even know you missed.
Mhm. Yeah, it's I think something that in the excitement of what's new, it's kind of forgotten often, or maybe you don't want to look at it, but then again, you miss the familiar things, and I feel it's and I'm curious how you've experienced that, but I feel it's often not even the logical things like how to figure out where to go, where's the nice cafe, where whatever, but it's more like this: the body remembers places, the body remembers the frequency of um your home, and if you move, it kind of needs to adjust. And sometimes I think we forget that we don't have just like the brain intelligence, we have the body intelligence as well, and there is a lot that our whole system wants to adjust before it can feel at home in a place, before you can really like kind of ground and feel safe somewhere. And that is not just a logical decision.
Absolutely. Um, yes, it was very different. Moving to the Midwest, it's nothing like what I learned in school. Like I had, and that sounds weird, but I had a preconceived notion about what it was going to be like, and it was so different than that. The culture is so different. And having lived in North Carolina my entire life, I mean, I can go, I can drive around, I know where I am, I feel very comfortable there. The energy of the state, I'm very comfortable there. But moving to North Dakota, the energy was so different. But now what's interesting in retrospect, I really did synergize with it. There were things that even now I miss about living there. And I love Rhode Island. It's beautiful, 45 minutes from Boston, but there are things that I miss when I think back, I'm like, gosh, I really did appreciate that. And at the time, maybe I didn't appreciate it as much because I was trying to find myself, find my way. But now that I'm out of the experience, I'm like, gosh, that was a really good character building experience. And there are things that I absolutely miss. And I definitely connected with North Dakota and will absolutely go back to visit.
Hmm. I feel like what you just said, for me, what came to my mind was like another version of you. I feel like we reconnect to that version. And in that moment, we kind of don't get it that much because we're so much in the experience. But like in retrospect, like you say, there's this like, oh, this I miss. So it's essentially a part of us that we miss and that we maybe kind of like get to know during
Mhm.
time in a certain location. And then we can take her on and we like kind of collect pieces of ourselves. That's a visual that comes to my mind. And I think it's really beautiful to see it that way, that it's not only a move, but it's like you get to experience a different version of you there. You get to experience like maybe a new version, totally new interests, character traits that you have never seen in yourself. So it's actually a getting to know yourself process, and not only a I now live not in point A but in point B. So there's a lot
Yeah.
more to it that can help us on our journey to getting to know ourselves better.
Absolutely. I will definitely say that it did bring out a different side of me moving there. So the majority of the year, it's freezing cold, like blizzards, negative 40s, some places negative 58, if you can imagine that. It really built my character. I was like, you know what? I can't. In North Carolina, it's easy. It barely snows. It's very easy. I didn't have to think very much because that was where I was raised. In this environment, it required a lot more thought. And so I was actually more present in my life because I was constantly thinking. I had to think about how to get here and there and like map out my day. And then how do I drive in this snow? In North Carolina, it's like a couple inches, they'll shut the whole place down. I mean, we're getting like a foot of snow and you're still going to work and we're acting like nothing's happening, you know? So, um, and I have a son, and they're playing outside and it's 0 degrees outside. I mean, the thought that as long as it's above zero, you could still play outside. That it's just totally different. So but it just brought out something. It brought out some really amazing things. And in the South, football is everything. Up there, hockey is everything. So even the raspberry coffee is something that I took from there that I'd never heard of before,
No, me
never
neither.
tried it before. I was like, that sounds weird. Love it. drink it all the time, so even the small things, and I'll say, as somebody who, uh if you are relocating, you're like, well, how do I find a connection? Coffee shop. A coffee shop, that is one of the best places for me to find a routine. So I started going to this coffee shop called Bully Brew, and I started going there, getting a raspberry tea. I started talking to people there. Because there's low diversity, I did stand out. So people recognize me easier. So it was actually a superpower for me, because when I would go places, they would recognize me. Um, and then I started feeling connected, like, oh, I have a friend here. I have somebody that I can, that's like, oh, I haven't seen you in a few days. I'm like, oh, somebody recognizes that I haven't been here. I matter to someone else besides the people in my house. Um, and that was really helpful for me to start talking and meeting new people. And then my spouse worked at the university, so that was helpful. So then I started networking and spreading out and meeting different people. So I ended up going to a Diwali festival, which was beautiful. We would go to this thing called the Potato Bowl, which is right before Halloween. It's probably snowing at that point already. Um, and so it's funny, this Southern girl moving to the to like the end of the country, basically the top of the country, because we would go on vacation to Winnipeg. That's where we would go. We were like, oh, we want a break. We want to go to Winnipeg. It was only 2 hours away. So, going from that hot southern place to standing outside in the snow and just acting like that's not happening, it was just so different. And,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. That people are so different there. They're so family oriented, and you have to be, because you really have to look out for people, because it is really, I thought heat was dangerous. Cold can be very dangerous in extremes. And so people really look out for each other. I was surprised by that. How in tune people are with each other. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not a good
Mhm.
thing, because it feels like the focus is on you. But um just building that routine, like the coffee shop. And then I would go to this little dog place, because I have dogs. I would go there and buy my dog food, and like buy little toys for my sister's dogs and send them. And we started to develop this relationship where I had people that I could actually talk to besides the people at work. um, so that's how it started for me, where I started like building that routine and having a structure, because I had my routine, growing up, was the routine that was set for me. And then it was just like an extension of what I had learned from childhood. And I was just like thinking under the influence on repeat. So moving somewhere new, I had to make my own routine. And, and I was like, I don't, I called my dad and be like, I don't know what to do. He's like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I've never seen snow like that. Send me a picture, So I had to think on my own. And it was a great experience.
I imagine, and I think like that's this shifting out of the structure you've been raised in. Like for all of us, I think it's like what you described is like happening to all of us, and we are not even conscious of it. We take on the daily structure or the routines of our caregivers, of our family, of our
Right.
close friends, of course, because like that's the environment we've been raised in. And then if you move, that's another thing. Like, oh, maybe have a total different structure. Maybe, like you say, um the temperature and the nature is so different that you need to like do totally different things to feel safe, feel good, to go some places than before. So your whole routine is shaken up, and the body is like,
Mhm.
all these habits are changing with that. And I think it could be like the source of kind of an identity crisis, but also it could be the source of like this, oh, okay, that's cool too. Like you said, maybe you enjoy the snow, you enjoy the cold,
Mhm.
even though you have never experienced it in that intensity before, but you found out like, okay, that's really fitting for me. That feels really,
Mhm.
really good. Or so there's a lot of like new information coming in and restructuring. And I think that's really beautiful to think about it like that, and not just like how we often are programmed this like, oh, okay, that would be like a challenge and this would be like hard and oh my God, how to do that? I've never have done that. You can always look at it from this like disempowering standpoint of, oh my God,
Yes.
that's gonna be hard. Or you look at it
Yes.
from the curiosity of a child who's like, okay, well, and how, you know, how do we figure it out? There must be some way because the other ones are living here too. So clearly there is a way to go about it. And I think that ties into what I wanted to ask you when you talked about that coffee shop routine, which I think is really, really helpful to go some places where people are not just like, you know, hustling, 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 but going for relaxation. Um, what I wanted to ask you is, you seem to be like really naturally open and curious, but is there, you could also go into a coffee shop with the energy of like, I want to be there, but I don't want to be like spoken to by anybody. So like there's this closed energy. And I feel that's something that I want to make people aware of is like, if you go some places, like have the intention of being open and meeting people. How do you, is there an intention you set, or is this like, how do you go about it so that actually like relationships occur or a communication occurs? Because if you're very close, then nothing happens. You can go to like the university and nobody speaks to you if you're not open. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there are a few things with that. So first of all, it's about my mindset. So I can get like that where I can get very cagey and closed off, you know, but I realized that doesn't serve me at all. Another thing that I did was eliminating like people say, "Oh, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert." Blah, blah. And I really try to move away from that type of language because when you label yourself, you start to embody those traits. So if I am telling myself all the time, oh, I'm an introvert, which if we look at it from like the psychologically trained standpoint, introverted people, introversion is where you recharge by yourself or like with one person. Extroverted people, they are energized in a crowd. That's really, you know, but I can be both. So I can be energized in a crowd. I can take solace in being solo. Whichever one. I go with it intuitively.
Mhm.
But when you take on those labels, so I'm extroverted, so I'm gonna just absorb all the space in the room and be loud and be big, or I'm introverted. I'm just gonna hide and be closed off, like you said. But when you close off and hide, you lose the ability to have positive experiences while you're trying to protect yourself from the stress of the potential negative experience. And for me, when I walked into that coffee shop, I was like, okay, I know I look different than everyone else in here because it is very much it's very German Icelandic. So I stand out.
Mhm.
Um but I'm like, you know what? I go in there, I smile, I talk to people, and it's about exposure. So one of the things that was important to me, I would say as a minority woman in that environment, was I know it's not my responsibility to teach all the people around me, but if this is one of your first interactions with someone who looks like me, I don't want that to be a negative,
Mhm.
interaction. So I smiled, I was approachable, and I actually didn't have a hard time meeting people. And people like to do the little small talk stuff. And so I would engage in those conversations. When you're listening to people, you can usually find one or two things. I mean, it's easy. Dogs, dogs are one, cats. Um, I love crystals. So, like crystals are a big thing there. Um, and spirituality, saging. There's a huge indigenous culture there as well. So there were a lot of things to talk about. You just have to find it. So when I would go into an environment, I like look around, like, okay, get an idea for the environment, context clues. I mean, you could tell, like, a lot of the coffee shops there have board games. So I love board games. So I'm like, okay, well, we could talk about board games. There's always something. So I would just start having conversations with people. Um, but yeah, definitely moving away from those like labels.
Mhm.
And if the interaction isn't great, then guess what? I can always just go home. Like I don't have to be there, and try again. So, but honestly, it was good.
Mm. That's so beautiful to hear. And I think it really speaks to the openness and the willingness to connect. And also this self-awareness of seeing like, okay, maybe in that environment you really stand out, but that doesn't have to be a bad
Mhm.
thing. That could also like be your, how to say that, the entrance to something really magical. Like you said, maybe there is some similarities, maybe there's some like differences that are noticeable at first sight, but
Mhm.
there is a willingness to connect. You will always
Yeah.
find something. And I think like this being aware of where you are in the environment you are and about the environment, and like finding something like crystals or like commenting on how beautiful the job is laid out, you can easily make connections always
Mhm.
if you're willing to. And I
Exactly.
think it's sometimes we just need the reminder of that it's like not, oh, what should I say? Do I fit in here? But it's like about this willingness to recognize what is present and going from there. Just like we are having this conversation without knowing each other, but it's like just beautiful
Exactly.
flowing because we're both open. And I feel like
Yeah.
the reminder that things just come from the above, and we're just
Mhm.
a channel of the energy that we want to actually be, and the filter is open, then things are easy. And what really ties into that is, I'd love to touch on that because a lot of like the women I work or that are in my world are identifying or have identified as shy or introvert before. And as you said, it's a label that is, I think, we haven't described correctly, or we don't know actually what it means, because like you said, introvert doesn't mean that you don't want to speak to people. It maybe is just about like how you recharge, but that doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to speak to another human being.
Yeah, right.
um, and I think even there, like even in this, like how we describe a certain word or what we feel a certain label is, we limit ourselves so much with this. And that
Mhm.
often is like where we close up so much that no new experience can come in because we think we're not capable. So it's about insecurity, is about feeling safe. And the moment you remind yourself that there is always something to be gained by being open, and that you don't have to be labeling yourself as like, I am that, so therefore I cannot, whatever, go to someone and be open and connect
Yeah.
easily. You're kind of like missing out on so many experiences, on so much insights and fun, actually.
Exactly. I definitely think these labels come with these, when we think of stereotypes, we
Mm.
think of like racial stereotypes or cultural stereotypes. But introverted and extroverted, those come with stereotypes. So if you're like, oh, that's just how she is, she's introverted, meaning she's flaky, she doesn't follow through, she's not going to do anything social, you invite her to something, she doesn't come.
Hmm.
That's not, we can't pack all of introversion. We cannot credit introversion for to all of that behavior.
Yeah.
So, and then it's like, oh, she's loud, she takes up the whole room, her presence is just like magnanimous. We cannot give extroversion all of that. That is different. There could be some underlying things with that as well. So there has to be that happy medium. But one thing I wanted to touch on too was, you have to also, when you are in this state of vulnerability with meeting new people, you have to be okay with people who have differing opinions. You have to be okay with people that don't believe exactly what you believe. And um, I'm okay with that. So there are people that had very differing opinions from me.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that. I learned a lot. I learned a lot from their perspective. And like you said, learning. If you look at things from like a childlike curiosity, it makes it so much easier to accept. First of all, you don't have to accept what everyone says. You just, okay, I'm not going to drag everybody to my viewpoint. No one's going to be able to drag me to their viewpoint. I might learn something, and we meet in the middle compromise, but every interaction isn't about like, you have to be just like me, my carbon copy. I don't want that, because I can just sit in the house and talk to myself in the mirror if
Yeah,
I wanted to talk to
agree.
someone like me.
Yeah.
What's the point of wanting to be social if
Mhm.
all I want is to talk to somebody who's, you know, mirroring my beliefs and not challenging me? Um, because sometimes it's like I said before, are these really my beliefs? Are these things that have been programmed into me because I've just been on replay? I mean, I went to the same Kroger that I went to when I was an infant. I
Yeah.
went to the same Harris Teeter that I went to that opened in like 1991, and so I was doing the same things. What am I learning?
Yeah, and I
You
feel
know?
we often are not even aware of that. We're
Mhm.
repeating things so often, and we're by that. It's nothing bad, but like
No.
we're not experiencing something new, of course, if we always do like
Mhm.
the same routines. And there is there is so much to be gained. So, like you said, if you're not okay with other people having other opinions, then you're making it hard for yourself. It's not
Mhm.
that that's bad. And I love, especially in these days and times that we're in right now, because I feel through COVID, like here in Europe, I can only speak for where I live, but
Mhm.
here, different opinions have been kind of been neglected a lot in the last years.
Mhm.
And that was really strange to see for me because I thought, like, we cannot just possibly be all on the same side, or we cannot have all the same experience and the same opinion because we're different people. How can that be? But opinions have been like kind of like, if you don't agree with what I think is right, then it's kind of like bad and you're the outcast. And there was no discussion possible like it was before. And I was witnessing that and I thought, like, how can that be? How can we not be open for someone else having a different opinion? And like you said, it doesn't have to be that you then agree to that opinion or that you think like, oh my God, yeah, that's the right way to do things because what is essentially right or wrong. But for you, you don't have to accept it in, but you could maybe learn or reflect on it without needing to agree. And I feel we collectively like kind of lost a bit of that skill in the last years. And I'm really
Yes.
happy that you're touching on that because I think it's an essential skill as a human so that we can learn and grow to see like, okay, that person thinks totally different. And maybe you think like, oh, but then again, if you reflect on it, you think like, okay, maybe there is something that I can get out of that. Maybe it's valuable for me to look at the topic from this perspective instead of this perspective. But then you can go to back to your own truth and it's totally fine still.
So exactly. There are a few things that you said. So like, I think that one of the things that has created a little bit of this is when people do say like, oh, my
Mhm.
truth and my perspective. Now, I do, we all have our perspective. Like when someone's like, oh, that's my perspective. And then like now it's evolved to my truth. Sometimes when people say that, if they don't have an open mind and they don't have like that cognitive flexibility, they become like really solidified and like this is the only truth that is factual. And I'm like, thoughts are not necessarily facts. They're just thoughts. We have so many thoughts. I think what it's like 60,000 thoughts or something like that a day. Doesn't mean any of those are true, you
Mhm.
know? Um, but I agree here. So I live in the US and the inability to have civil discourse with people. I mean, you cannot talk to anyone that thinks any differently. And I would say now, I don't want to get into the danger zone, but I would say especially right now, I think it started in COVID and then
Mhm.
it was like, I am who I am. I don't need anybody else, blah blah blah. And then people just like came out of their houses and I don't know, just very different, very different. And I think that just when you're at home, you're on the phone, everything is based on computer and algorithms. It's going to feed you what it knows you want. So your whole environment is what you want. And you've been in this steeping in yourself for so long. Then you come back out and it's like people just cannot deal with people that have different opinions. I think people, it's almost like people forgot that there were people that have different thoughts and opinions. Um, I also think that there's, I don't know how far we want to go into this, but I also think that like some of the DEI efforts too have created a little bit of this, like solidifying this, like you're either on this side or you're
Yeah.
on that side.
Yeah.
If you don't agree with me, you're, there's something wrong with you and you need to be like educated and dragged over to the other side.
Mhm.
Um, which, you know, if you come from it from a learning perspective, what you might learn is like, hey, that person is not for me. Or you might learn, hey, that's an interesting thing. Like, I met someone recently here and we clicked. And then she was like, hey, do you want to borrow these books? So now I'm reading a book about Mary, Queen of Scots. Like, how random, how random, but I'm open.
Yeah. Why not try out a perspective or at least listen to it, regardless of the topic? So I know like it's easy to get into things that are dangerous to talk about. But
Danger
like
zones, yeah.
yeah, totally. It's it's the same actually. And the rebellious side of me thinks like that cannot be the case. But then again, yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
it is. But like
Yeah.
regardless of the topic, I think it's really beneficial to everyone to like be a little more fluid or flexible about to see like, okay, what does the other person perceive, what does the other person
Hmm.
think, and it doesn't have to say like I have to take it on, or we don't need to even like label it as right or wrong. So in my coaching, the first thing I ever say to anyone is like, this is a non-judgmental space. Whatever you say, it's your truth, it's totally fine. I don't get offended by it, I don't need to take it on, but vice versa, let's just be authentic in here and not judge what the other one says. And I feel that's something I'm stating that before because it's not common sense, at least here, to be that non-judgmental. And I feel like over the last years this has kind of evolved, and I laughed so hard when you said like people come out of the houses after that long time of being inside and just being connected to through the internet, which gives you it, they actually call it feed, so it feeds you
Hmm.
what it thinks you want, and then you go outside and oh my god, people are not the feed, they have their own opinions and they might differ from you, but we have kind of like forgotten that it's like that,
Hmm.
that you can sit around and discuss with other people who actually not mirror back to you what is convenient to you, whatever that might be. But it's not
Hmm.
your in your bubble anymore. And that fact alone, I felt like in the last years has ruffled some feathers. And it's really interesting because I think that's how we learn collectively, how we evolve collectively is through discussion, through seeing another reflection, another part of the whole puzzle. And then you can say, like, okay, that's totally not clicking for me. Or, oh my God, what an insight. It could be both, but it's about the openness to look at it. And like you said, it's so beautiful that coming back to your talk before about how you connected through that coffee shop with all these people who then like clicked with crystals, doing a lot of like energetic cleansing or whatever you might have or have not experienced before. So there's so much richness and depth
Hmm.
beyond the superficial, like, hey, where are you coming from? How's the weather? You can find like these little treasures in other people and then totally click apart from your maybe political opinion. You could both be into crystals and it's totally amazing, the connection. So there's so much richness to human connections. That's essentially what I want to go to, that we don't have to limit ourselves to just that one thing that we're not clicking and then like saying, okay, that's not for me.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a hyperfixation on the negative. And our brains are, well, our brains are wired that way to help us, you know, our brains love patterns. And they're also, our brains are super lazy. You know, they love patterns. It's like click, 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 click. Okay, now I'm making an assumption. These are the stereotypes I have. These are the biases that I have. This is what this person is. Boom. You know, and so like you're able to make these, like your brain's making these snap judgments. You have to say, hold on, how do you even know any of that's true? You've never even talked to the person, you know? And sometimes I have to talk to myself like, how do I even know that that's true? I've just made up an entire scenario, and I have no idea if that's even the case. Um, and a lot of times it's not. So but to go back to the technology piece, you know, we have ChatGPT, Alexa does whatever we say. We have all of these things around us that pretty much just do what we tell them to do. So then when you're involved in interacting with another human being who maybe has that same mindset, but you're just not doing the things they want, or um you know, there's a different perspective, you just don't know how to handle that. And there are so many things to learn from people who think different things. I mean, you don't always have to accept, like, you don't have to accept someone's feedback. If you don't believe it and you're not going to modify your behavior, you don't have to accept it. You can disagree respectfully. You don't have to take in every single thing that's placed in front of you, you know? Just like we don't take in every single substance or every single piece of food when we're walking by. You don't have to take in everything everyone says. If you accept the feedback and you want to make changes, okay, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to. So I think there's some empowerment in that, like being secure enough to say, you know what, this is who I am, and I accept that you're giving me this feedback, and I just have to decide whether I care enough to modify it, whether I think, you know, what's the like, what's the risk here? What's the benefit? Am I going to modify my behavior? Is this going to require, is it just like, oh, I don't like when you do this, whatever thing? Okay. Or if it's like something larger, sometimes it takes work to make changes. So am I going to invest the time to make those changes, or do we just not mesh? You know, but you have to make those determinations. But also, when you make those determinations, people feel really isolated. I've noticed now people are like, oh, I'm looking for girlfriends and blah, blah, blah. What kind of person are you? What kind of friend are you? Are you the friend that's like, she does one thing that makes me mad, I'm done with her? Are you like the write off queen? Well, yeah, life's going to be lonely. You're always going to be looking because no one's going to be 100% what you want them to be. You have to be able to deal with people being different than you, and appreciate the differences and open yourself up and learn new things.
Agreed, very much. And I think what you've touched upon is really interesting because this we don't have to accept in what another person said. I love the analogy to the food. I totally agree. And personally, I would say like I would love to have known that in my teenage years because I'm highly empathic. So I always have taken on the emotions of others without even knowing. And therefore I have accepted in a lot of like beliefs about how I am or how I should be or how the harmonies is to be kept that aren't actually mine. And when I discovered like, oh, when someone said I need to be like that, I don't have to accept that in. That was a like really big light bulb moment where I thought like, my God, that was
Yeah.
so nice to have known earlier in my life. But hey, it's coming up now. So that has been like the trigger for a lot of deconditioning. And I think it's really necessary to sometimes remind ourselves. And what I would love to know from your perspective is I feel this is so much easier when you actually know a bit about yourself. Because if you don't know who you are and if you don't stand firm with that and your own opinions, it's like really hard to say, I don't accept that in because you have no idea who you are. So where's the boundary between like you and that other experience, opinion, whatever lifestyle? So there has to be like, where is the I? Then I can like see, okay, what do I want to take into that space and what not? So it's for me, I think it's about being safe, being ourselves, and knowing at least a bit about who we actually are, what our soul is calling
Hmm.
here to do, to be able to say, like, no, I don't want to accept that in.
Yeah. Um, well, first, I've always been a very spiritual person. Not in like the traditional sense, but just like a spiritually connected individual. Um, and then I was started identifying my core values. So leaving my natural environment made me have to think about, who am I? What do I really, what's important to me? What do I actually care about? Because now I'm out of my environment where I actually have to think about this. Um, And it actually made my second move to Rhode Island easier because I was like, okay, these are the things that are important to me. Um, and just identifying those core values. And I will say, I do want to touch on an experience that I had that really beat me up a little bit and made me say, you know what? No, I'm not accepting this. Um, I My core values are authenticity, working hard. I love working. That's a core value for me. And then also just being truthful to people that and to myself. So if I know that I am on the day that you want me to do something, I know in advance I don't want to do it. How am I going to I'm going to be thinking of 18 ways to get out of this. I'm just going to say, "No, thank you. Thank you for thinking of me, but unfortunately I won't be able to do that at this time." So, I'm trying to limit my own stress, which sounds very self-centered, but I'm trying to limit my own stress, and I feel like if I'm agreeing to everything, like you said, if you're agreeing and taking in everything, what do you stand for? You stand for nothing, because as you engage all these people that have these polarizing views, and you're just like a chameleon, what color are you really? Are you red? Are you green? Um and that was tested for me because I've always been very even as a kid, very firm and very aware of who I was, what I liked and what I didn't like. And I had to learn, like, okay, just because you naturally don't like something, you got to try to be open,
Mm-hmm.
and try things and try things. Um, but I had an experience actually with a professor at school um, regarding some DEI stuff. And I had said that my core values were intelligence, working hard. I come from a very hardworking family. Every single person in my family owns their own business, and three of them have 9 to 5 jobs on top of having their own businesses. My grandparents had their own businesses. My uncles and aunts have their own
Mm-hmm.
businesses. I come from an entrepreneurial family, just all of us. So working hard, being punctual, respecting people's time. Like, I was personifying what they classified as European things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. Like Germany, we
I
are
was
exactly like that.
I was personifying things, and I was actually told that I had some internalized racial issues. I was told that by my instructor. And we went back and forth. I said, what do you mean by that? And she was like, well, you're personifying a lot of European ideology. And as a minority, um, you're internalizing that, and you're exhibiting some internalized views, internalized racial views on yourself. And I was like, I don't accept that. I don't accept it. And she tried to use intimidation tactics on me, and I was like, I don't accept it. And it got to the point where I had to email her and I said, look, this is a non-productive conversation. I'm done talking to you about it. The end. Sometimes that works for people. I don't advise that people do that all the time because you might have significant consequences. But I was ready to walk away at that point.
Yeah.
I had already made a point A, I had already had a plan A, B, and C, but like I couldn't accept that.
Mhm.
I wasn't going to accept it. I wasn't going to be stereotyped. I wasn't going to be put into a box. There's nothing wrong with having a strong work ethic and wanting to and feeling good when you work hard and you see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be told that there's something wrong with that
Mhm.
or toxic
Mhm.
with that. So I said, I just don't accept it. I'm not going to accept this, and I'm not going to continue to have this conversation because you're not going to get me to agree with you.
Mhm.
And that was it.
And I think
She
that's
left me alone.
powerful because you knew who you are and what you want to
Mhm.
accept into your life and what not. And therefore you could say like, okay, like, no, we're done with this conversation because
Yeah.
I'm not going to like dim my light or change based on intimidation. You can change based on inspiration, like out of your
Mhm.
own free will. You could do the change, of course. But like if it's
Right.
coming, to make you smaller, if you feel it's
Right.
not making you feel good. That's like my you know, how I make decision is always, do I feel better with it or without it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's regardless of what the topic or the logic might say. Like, if I don't feel more empowered, help. And that's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what you're describing. It's, she wanted to put you into a box, or wanted you to accept like that label. And if you don't like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to, but we need to have
Right.
the strength already within us, found that, because it's definitely there, sometimes lost maybe, to say like, well, no, not going any further here, because this is not supporting me on my journey. And that sometimes might feel harsh to the outside. It might feel like you're selfish, or however you could label it, but it's authentic. It's, in that moment, it's protecting
Mm-hmm.
you. It's your safety, you protecting your uniqueness, and that is so much more
Yes.
important than anything else that anyone else could ever think about, what decision you just made in that moment. But I feel we sometimes have to remind ourselves that we need to be true to ourselves first, and then the rest can be considered.
Right. Well, I definitely think like one of the easiest ways to find out what your core values are is look up different core values and see what resonates with you. So I have a lot of sheets on that, like different core values, and then what resonates with you. And then when we go through, you might pick 10, and then give me scenarios in which you utilize this. Give me scenarios in which like this boundary was crossed and it violated this value. So these are the core values that you have. And now that you know that, live your life aligned with that. And what doesn't work within that, you either have to be pliable and compromise, or you're going to have to make changes, but it's an independent decision, like, for instance, like my spouse and I, our work ethics are very different. So I like to work a lot. My spouse does not like to work uh, what they would consider an excessive amount. But that's a core value of mine. If I'm not working every day at some point in the day, I don't it doesn't serve me well. I need to constantly be going. I'm constantly taking a course. Like I'm in grad school. I'm also doing Coursera. I'm doing this. I have a 9 to 5 job. I also do mobile crisis for the state of Rhode Island. I love to be in different places doing different things. My mind is a sponge and I want it to stay that way. So I just keep feeding it. But I we are different. We're different. And then like what's the compromise? Okay. Well, I have timers for how long I do certain things just so I stay in line. And I have a nice block of time for like quality time. And that's what I do. So I accepted that feedback, but I also am like my core value, this is where I feel good,
Working for you.
is when I'm working and creating and it brings something out of me that feels good to me. But I also accept that I need to be accessible. I can't just do this all the time. So just that openness.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think, again, that's how we learn from each other, is by seeing like, okay, that's me. I love to do that. And then my other half, whoever you are in contact with, um, does it a different way. And you meet in the middle because you want to have a connection. That's why you're together, why you're
Yeah.
friends, why you're partners. Um, but it doesn't have to say like you need to take on the full version of how the other one does it. It's like you meet somewhere in the middle where it's feeling good for both. And it doesn't need to be like you coming all the way or the other one coming all the way.
Hmm.
We find the sweet spot in the middle if we're like really willing to and open to, like you said. So it's more, I think, again, about the willingness. Then it's like it's nothing hard, it's nothing fixed, it's fluid, and it could be that
Hmm.
this day and that the other day. So it's always a dance, but it's like about the general openness to be there for another one, and to not be like, totally an island, because that's also not how we function. And maybe to one degree, someone is needing more quality time with more persons than the other one who is going more into hermit mode. But again, there, it's phases, it's fluid. So I feel what we really need to remind ourselves all the time is this openness and this curiosity, and like just seeing what is feeling good in that moment, and not like putting things in stone and saying like this is how it is and this is how it has to be forever, because things change and we change. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's just enough to have as a concept often.
Yeah, exactly. I think that you're right. Like the pulling people and trying to make them be who you want them to be, it just doesn't work.
No.
It just doesn't work because it's not real.
Yeah.
It's not real. And I think having that, understanding those core values, being aligned with it. Now, core values can be hard because some of them are, maybe you don't want to admit that that's one of your core values.
Mm.
Sometimes it's hard to look at yourself. I think that that's why so many people fought COVID at first. It's like, I don't want to be at home with myself.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? I've been running from this person for years. Now I'm stuck in the
Yeah.
house with this person,
Yeah.
you know? And it's brought out a lot of things in people, you know, and you really just have to like deal with it
Mm.
however you can. Um, but I think it's brought some positive things as well. I think people do know themselves a little bit better than they did before because they've had time to sit still. Um, but then it's like, well, what do you do with that?
Mm.
And like you said, the individualism piece, I think that a lot of people are so afraid of judgment because um, it, we're such social beings at our core. Like naturally, we're social beings. We're afraid of judgment because, you know, whatever people believe back a long time ago, you know, if you were rejected by your group, that could be you know, your survival could be in jeopardy. And our brains, as advanced as they are not as advanced as we are right now. You know, we have advanced thoughts, but those instincts are still in there.
Mhm.
And so like that fear of just of judgment and that like chameleon behavior, you can only do that for so long before the real you pops out. I mean, we see that in dating, right? Like, oh yeah, I love this, I love that. And then they're like, I hate shrimp. Well, you've been eating it for 8 months. Yeah, I did because I did it for you. No, no, no. Just say you don't care for it. Okay, not a big deal, not serious, but it becomes serious because now you've presented yourself differently than who you actually are, and it's built resentment, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just very interesting. Judgment and fear of that rejection is so interesting, and the things that we do trying to protect ourselves. Some of it we don't even recognize we're doing.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like someone who's listening today, they're gonna be like, "Do you really like shrimp or no? Tell me the truth." You know?
But it starts with the little things. I think we
Yeah,
really need to like be true that the little things are often the ones
yeah,
that like kind of can overthrow a whole relationship. So let's be
yeah.
true, because actually what happens if that's not working out because you don't like shrimp, to say in that example, then it wasn't meant to work out, you know? So that it's only like you learning that lesson earlier. So there's actually,
Right.
but I agree with you that the fear of rejection, one that I can definitely raise my hand on, it's like bringing up a lot of insecurities. It's bringing up a lot of instinct that says like that's not gonna be safe. Better stay in the
Hmm.
tribe and be safe, and not be like uniquely you, but be safe. So we're fighting here against ourselves often, and
Yes.
I think it has to be acknowledged. So we something I always invite people is to like be a bit more gentle with yourself when you've done things that maybe are not as authentic as you wish them to be, but you did it out of like a safety mechanism. You did it out of like an old wound, and that's okay. We can become aware of that and work on that, but we don't have to beat ourselves up for it. And like really being gently and being nice to ourselves, that opens up a lot of, possibilities
Yeah.
for change then, but not out of this like, you have to be beating yourself up energy, but out of inspiration and curiosity for who am I actually.
Yeah. I think self discovery, be gentle about it. Just like you discover something about, you know, another person or, you know, for instance, like it's top of mind for me right now because I have a dog. My dog Margot, she's only a year old. So like the personality develops. I got her when she was very tiny, and now her personality is developing. And it's like, okay, well, these are the things she likes. These are the things that she doesn't like. She has a very robust personality, but like I can accept her. Why can't I accept my own
Yeah.
mistakes or my own things that, hey, maybe I do want to work on this. How can I work on it? Journaling, meditation, shadow work, therapy, coaching, a good friend, ingesting the right content on YouTube, podcasts. There are lots of ways that you can grow and learn. Exposure, there are a lot of ways, but you can't beat yourself up. It's like, oh, I'm flawed, I suck. Like, no, everyone's flawed. Everyone is flawed. But like how you work within that and work to improve it instead of using it as like a way to beat yourself up. Like get out of the negative and say, okay, this is how I am. Like one thing, for instance, for me is I used to be more, I guess you could classify it as confrontational. Like I would just be very blunt and say things. And it doesn't work. It doesn't serve you very well to be like that.
Mhm.
But you know what? I took that and used it as a transferable skill. It's like, okay, well, because I'm comfortable with having civil discourse with people, I can talk to different types of people.
Yeah.
I don't have to, argue or debate. I like to debate. I don't have to debate with them, but like I am not afraid of what they're going to say because I have more self-confidence. So I'm like taking a skill that was considered to be like negative
Mhm.
and using it to actually help me make more friends, network with people, get out of my comfort zone. I'm like, okay, how can I channel this energy of like being okay with thinking on my feet, talking to people that are different, um, having an open mind, being like, look, if I'm not going to accept this feedback, I don't have to. Like, how can I utilize all those skills and make my life better? That's one way to do it. Or I could say, oh, like I'm I'm mean, or someone would think I'm like being confrontational because I want to debate about something. Like I can take it as a negative crutch and put it in like the introvert extrovert pile, or I can say, you know what? This is just a part of my personality and I can channel this to help me do something important and help me with my passions. And that's what I chose to do. But that, I'm in my this side of my 30s, you know, and it took me a long time to learn that,
Mhm.
you know. But I think people just really need to speak on it, um, because I was raised in a time where it's like good little girls they smile all the time. Sometimes I don't feel like smiling, and that's okay. You don't know what's going on in my head. I might be thinking about something amazing, but I don't always have to project that, you know. Um, but it's about my self assurance. I know what I'm thinking, so that I know it, I don't have to worry about, I do think about the like outside perspective, but just ask me if you're wondering versus like making up stories.
Yeah.
Just ask,
Always a good
you know?
approach, to be curious again about what people
Yeah,
are thinking at that moment or what they're about. And
yeah,
I think it's really beautiful to alchemize things that maybe are perceived as too much, too whatever, or not enough
mhm,
into strength, because they are. And I truly believe that every character trait we have right now, whether we label it as a good one or not, it doesn't matter. It's there for a reason, so that we can learn and
mhm,
emerge and find a new way of being within ourselves. And so this alchemization of something that maybe someone else says is too bold, but you find
mhm,
strength in it. That's like what I think we're essentially here for, because then you can like truly uniquely be you when you approach it from an empowering standpoint. And
yeah,
that's what we all do in our different, topics that we work on in our different like coaching spaces. It's all, I think, coming back to like helping people become aware of who they truly are and feel good with
yeah,
that. And that is like the biggest gift. If you know
yeah,
who you are, if you're like assured in yourself, How amazing. From
Absolutely.
that point on, you can create a lot of beautiful things. And I think you are.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that wonderful conversation. That was deeply inspiring. If people want to connect with you, what is your like the best way to approach you?
They can reach me on Instagram. My website is actually under construction, so I'm getting some new pictures. Very exciting. And I'll be posting that on my Instagram, but it's Perfectly Empowered Coaching is my handle for Instagram. I'm also on Threads.
I will link your Instagram handle below. And as soon as you have the website, I can put it in there as well, which is so exciting. Love that you're building that. Thank you for that beautiful time together. It was a joy, and I'm so happy that we have met.
Yes, me too. I had such a great time. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.